I use a Sony ZV-E and Logitech C webcam. Today, I'll discuss the Logitech C's pros, cons, and setup tips. Webcams need proper setup for quality. Despite new models, the Logitech C is popular for its quality and price. I'll show you how to set it up with OBS. Today, I want to discuss this webcam. I've had it for years. This is the C webcam. Many might think, what terrible quality. Professional cameras have great factory quality, but webcams need proper setup for good results. Let's move on. Why is this webcam popular? It offers good video quality. Let's set it up. The webcam identifies as HD Pro Webcam C. It's tough. Even with a dirty lens, it works fine. Despite settings in Logitech or OBS, it can go up to 1920 by 1080, which is sufficient. You can lower it to 1280. Sometimes, it won't configure higher FPS, but you can increase it. If your webcam lags, try JPG or H. For color, use Rec. 709. I'll adjust the camera, and, as we see, look at this camera. The C webcam is renowned, offering excellent video quality. It's affordable now, and I'll link it in the description for purchase on Amazon. The quality is impressive for the price. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe. Let's set it up now. I'll show you my OBS and check the properties. The webcam is durable. It still functions well despite mishandling. In Logitech or OBS settings, it supports up to 1920 by 1080 resolution, which is adequate. If your webcam lags, try switching to JPG or H. For color, Rec. 709 is recommended if the default isn't preferred. Adjusting the position reveals its capabilities. Because literally, the lens can be dirty, and you'll still look good. The cable can be all twisted and even broken, and it will still work fine. This camera has fallen, I've covered it in dust, I've mistreated the cable, basically everything, and it's still going strong. Now, why does this tab come up? Because here we're going to see the following. Despite the settings in Logitech, or, well, in OBS in this case, it gives me the option to set this up. I think this camera can go up to 1920 by 1080, and that's completely sufficient. You won't have any issue selecting this, even at 30 FPS, which is what it has with this resolution of 1920 by 1080. You can even lower it to 1280. Here, it might lag a bit in the background, but I'm here. And even at some points, I don't know why it won't let me configure the higher FPS, but it will give you the option to increase the FPS. Now, let's say this is the first thing. One thing I always recommend is that if your webcam isn't working well and it's lagging a lot, try switching to one of these two options, JPG and H. And directly in color, I recommend Rec. 709 in case you don't like the default one. The rest really depends on what you all prefer, but what I want us to see is that when we open this up, double-click, and go back to this configuration, we'll see this option that says Configure Video. When we click here, that's when we find the magic of this camera. For example, I'm going to try to move this around to position the camera correctly. And as we can see, look at this camera. That's amazing. I can lower the brightness a bit here because it's too bright. Then I can play around with the contrast, maybe a bit higher. Then the same with saturation. I can adjust it here. Maybe I look too pale, so I'll bump it up a bit. Then here with the sharpness. I honestly don't remember very well what it does, so let's just leave it more or less there. White balance is personal, but I prefer super white. Options may auto-activate, like on the screen, which I'll disable to adjust. I can make it yellow or tile white. Then change what we can. Some things can't be changed. Gain helps but can add grain, making it pixelated. Then we're going to change the rest, whatever we can, because there are some things we won't be able to change. This is the gain, and this sometimes helps us a lot, but it can really increase the grain, so it ends up looking very pixelated, so to speak. Then the zoom, you can just say to zoom in or out. Then the focus, this also depends on what you are doing. Personally, I really like to leave it like this because, for example, I have this little box here, and it automatically focuses on it. As you can see, it has a pretty good autofocus. If I take the box away from here, you'll see me really well, and if I had it back in, it'll focus super well. The downside is that sometimes you have to play around with it a bit, maybe putting your hand in front, but let's say the autofocus is pretty good. But if we don't need this, we just disable it and activate the focus wherever we want. Focus is fixed, not auto. Auto exposure changes with any shift. So the whole time it will be focusing because it is not focusing automatically, but I fixed it on a point. Exposure is key. Auto exposure changes with screen additions, affecting colors. I disable it, keeping it at -5 to avoid issues. With it off, exposure stays stable. Reactivating shows mixed results. I use this webcam for calls when my camera overheats. Low light compensation is subtle with my lighting. Let's see what happens when it's off. So anything I add to the screen will automatically change the entire scene and even change the colors. So I usually prefer to disable the exposure, but keep it at the default number it comes with, which in my case is -5. Because if I start changing it just by 1, look, here it is at -4, and look at everything that changed. -5 is how it should be, and -6 is already too dark. So I leave it at -5, but the good thing is that if I come back here and do this, it doesn't change at all. I mean, look, I add a sheet, and the exposure doesn't change, and I'm completely fine and happy. So if I reactivate it and do this again, you can see how it interprets things, and sometimes it does it for the better, and sometimes for the worse. Now, this pan feature here, let's see how to set it up. There are some things that honestly, I haven't even fiddled with much over all this time because I think in the 5, 6, 8 years I've had this webcam. Nowadays I use a camera, but this works great for when I need to, for example, make a call or a meeting where the camera overheats, or when I just don't want to use it because it's more of a hassle to turn on all the lights and everything. Meanwhile, there's this thing called low light compensation, which is like compensating for low light. You might not notice it much because I have a lot of lights on around me, but I want to show you something. Let's disable this and apply it. What happens with this? Understand webcams. I've set it up. No one comments, "You look terrible." They say, "Wow, great." Lighting is key. Even the best camera needs good lighting. I have 3 lights on. The back one doesn't help much. No, nobody's going to say that because it looks super cool, obviously not with the quality of the camera that I'm going to show you next, which is over here. Because, well, the camera is a whole other topic, but it helps me too. It can support me. For example, if I'm doing an unboxing here, then I lower the camera a bit, and I leave that camera over there so I can see myself. But what I mainly wanted to tell you is that lighting makes the camera. The camera, really, whether it's a webcam or a professional camera, can be the best. But if you don't have good lighting, if you don't have good lights, even with a light bulb or a lamp, you can turn it on, and that will help you a lot. For example, let me show you something. Right now, I have 3 lights on, including this one here, although the one in the back honestly doesn't do much for the webcam. I want to show you something, and if I turn on the camera, you can see there's a cool effect there. But if I disable it, the background looks really bad. The webcam doesn't do much, honestly. Look, I can activate it, and it doesn't really make a big difference here. The dimming isn't that noticeable. But if I start turning off the other lights, let me take one out, check this out. This is when you realize that the camera does a decent job, but if you don't complement it with lights, you're not going to achieve anything. I'm going to turn off another one. Look at this. I can barely see myself. Now, there's something about this camera that I can open up here. I can go to video settings, and I think I have it open. Yes, it's this option I disabled a moment ago, which compensates for light. So I can activate it, but honestly, there's not much to compensate for right now. I'm going to turn off the last light. Let me switch that off. Now I can't see anything at all. I can turn on one of the main lights I have, which is this one, and we can see if this helps. Not really. It's not making a huge difference. But there are times when activating this low light compensation helps a lot. I don't know why it's not making any changes right now, but I can tell you it does change a lot of things. Now, let's go back to where we were before to wrap this up. I'm going to hit OK. If I turn on this light and the other light, which might not affect much but looks nice, it completely changes everything. So I can tell you that before even thinking about buying the webcam, think about your lighting system. Generally, you need to light up the left, right, center, and back, like a 360 setup. You can have one light in the back if you want, but the front is important. For example, if I turn off this light on the right, it creates a lot of shadow over here. As you can see, it creates a shadow that some might like, but personally, I don't because it also creates a shadow in the back when I move my head, and it's really distracting. But if I turn on this light, you'll notice that the light dims quite a bit, and that shadow doesn't have as much impact anymore. So basically, That's the summary. What conclusion can I give you? Honestly, the webcam in 2023 is still worth it. It still has a quality that can compete with anything else, and especially its price competes with anything on the market. I used this camera, and you can check it out in my videos from many years ago when I was making videos as a kid, when I was super little, talking about who knows what. But it looked great. I mean, it looked really good, and I never needed a professional camera until I personally wanted to take my content to the next level. But if you need this camera for video calls, conferences, and all that stuff, trust me, the quality will be more than enough. Just make sure to use good lighting. If you don't have studio lights, use a regular bulb or a lamp, or the best light in the world, which is natural light. Try to position the webcam in front of a window, set all these options up, and don't just assume that plugging it in will automatically give you the best quality. Take the time to go into the settings, change everything, and hit accept. This is an OBS, but there's an app called Logitech Cam or something like that you can install. It has even more advanced settings than what you find in OBS. Set it up, and you'll get a much higher quality than what you're seeing here. Honestly, for a webcam of this price, that's been around for so many years, it's totally worth it. One thing to note is that this webcam has an audio option that I definitely do not recommend. I won't even play the audio here because seriously, don't do it. If you use this webcam, don't use the audio, don't use the webcam's microphone because you'll just end up deafening people, and it'll be horrible. That said, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching this video, bye bye.